Hey everybody, Mike Pfeiffer with Pfeiffer Hobby Supply. Today I'm going to do a review of the new Bachmann track cleaning cars. They're a scrubbing type car, and you'll see a picture of it here when I get it out of the box. This one happens to be the Western Pacific. I think they make them in UP, WP, Conrail, and B&O for some reason. But anyway, let's take a look at it and see what we think. Okay, gang. So this is the Bachmann cleaning car. I already took the lid off and stuff because it's too hard to do one-handed. But we're going to see if we can get this out of here and show it to you. It is pretty much a standard Silver Series Bachmann boxcar. Pretty nice detail. Their trucks, their couplers, hang on one second. And they are body mounted couplers. And I'm going to try and get a little, I don't know how close I can get, but you can see that the pad on here is not really a Bright Boy type pad, but more of a, I don't know what you would call it, kind of a hair type pad. It does have a very rough finish to it. In other words, if I put my finger on there, it almost feels like a abrasive pad. You can see that there's a couple of pieces of foam in there that you need to pull out because the weight of it just holds it down, or there's springs that hold it down. So we'll pull those out. We'll give it a couple laps around the layout, and I'll give you my impression on it and see how it tracks. Okay, I wanted to show you guys, once I got the foam out of there, you can see that it has a real nice spring action to it. And it's not a overly heavy bottom part here, but it does have some spring pressure to it. So we will take a look at it. I'm going to put it in the train and we're going to see how she runs. Okay, upon my first test of putting it on the track, I found the car leaning to one side, and I took it off to find out why it was leaning. And it turns out that the springs under here do overpower the weight of the car and push the car up to the point that the trucks almost are losing contact with the track. That's not a good thing. I probably overweighted this car. I put a relatively large weight in each end, but it's pretty obvious to me that you're going to have to do one of two things, and that is you're going to have to put some extra weight in the car, or you're going to have to take those springs out of the pad, and then the pad will very likely not drag the track with very much pressure. That being said, I have put the weight in there, and I've noticed another thing. You touch the car, and the car is very wobbly side to side, which leads me to believe that the bolsters are not flat. We'll see, but I think this car is going to rock and roll when I get it on there. We'll check it out and find out. Okay, here's the car running in the train. And to make a liar out of me, it's not very wobbly at all. However, the car, with the weight I added into it, is pretty darn heavy, and the scrubby on the bottom makes it, even with just 10 cars or whatever I have on there, makes it want to lose traction. The car is so heavy and so much friction that it's detrimental to the performance. I probably overdid the weight. If I would have only put half that weight in there, you'd have to play with the weight to find out. I just did the weights in there very hurriedly to see if I could get the car to track better or at all, and it does track well, and it is staying connected, and it has glided right over, is that a word, glided? It has glided right over all the turnouts, which I'm a little bit surprised. I was thinking it might catch, the fiber material might catch on some of the turnouts, but as you can see, it appears to be moving along, and I would suspect that once that pad gets worn in just a tiny bit on the rails, that it may slide a little more freely. I'm not sure what that pad is made of, and I'm not sure if it has some kind of abrasive on it, kind of like a Scotch-Brite or something, but it's definitely not that coarse. But it's some kind of material like that, and God knows what it is. But you can see that the car seems to track pretty well. I'm kind of surprised, but you can see that it's stalling my train. Okay, I got past that one point there, and I have the train sped up considerably, and I have to say the car does wobble slightly. But for something you can buy off the shelf, this car might do well. I will also tell you that when it was rocking and rolling, I know the weight would be the thing that would keep it from doing that. However, the shell was not all the way down on the chassis either. But the shell being all the way down on the chassis, it wouldn't help anything with the weight and the tension of the springs on there. I think it's good that we now have a choice to buy a car, a drag type car, without having to make something from scratch. And I have to assume that the pad on there is probably doing a good job. This next time around I'm going to pull it off and we're going to take a look at the pad on there. Okay, you can see here that even after 2 laps around the track, you can see the black residue on this pad. So the pad is obviously buffing the track. Another thing I will tell you is these are not screws. These are just plastic tabs that stick up, and this just pops over those tabs. I don't think that's a bad design. We'll see how they last. If you know, I mean, that's just something that time will tell. The pad, let me see if I can do this one-handed. The pad slides out the side very easily, like so. And then all you have to do is put your fingers there and center it in the car, and you're good to go. What I have done is I took one of those weights out because I severely overweighted it, okay? So I don't, you know, the pulling problem is not their problem, it's my problem with not taking the time to try and weight the car to some weight that it's comfortable with in a train. But I've reduced it down to one of those weights. I'm going to put it back in the train and see if we have luck with that. Okay, on my Digitrax throttle I'm set back to a speed setting of 20, and the car seems very stable with only one weight in it. And it may not even take but half of the weight that I have in it now to steady it up. And as I said too, I think once the car goes around and around, it'll smooth out the pad somewhat, and it'll get less restrictive pulling up the grade. But we're going to see what it does here. As you can see, the car looks pretty stable, and that's with only half the weight that I had in it, along with its own weight. The locomotives at this point seem to be doing okay. There's still a little bit of a struggle. You would have to play with the additional weight in this to see if you could get it more accurate than what I have. These just happen to be what I pulled out, and they are pretty heavy weights. I don't know what they weigh, but nevertheless, I would say that that pulls pretty well in a train. I mean, these are pretty light locomotives as well, and I have a 2% grade. It's flat on this part, but where it starts to go uphill, it's 2%. We'll see how it handles the trestle over here. The trestle's on a 2% grade with curves. I can hear it on the edge of wanting to slip, but it is pulling the car. Like I say, I think maybe even cutting that weight that I have there in half, maybe I way overdid it on the additional weight, but you will find that it will need some additional weight. Be it a penny or two or something in there glued down to give it some additional weight. And you can tell by setting it on the track without the body shell on it and just trying to rock it, you can tell whether it's pivoting on the screws in the center or the springs in the center, or whether it's actually on the bolsters. But it is something that you'll have to address when you get the car. But when I get it dialed in, I'm pretty sure I'll be extremely happy with it. I like the pad situation. Okay, you can see here that the car weighs 1.9 ounces. I forget what the recommended weight is supposed to be, but that's almost 2 ounces. That's pretty heavy. Like I say, I would recommend starting small weights and start putting them in there until you get the rock out of it. You can see that this is pretty, pardon the term, rock solid. Anyway, 1.9 is what I have the weight at on the car right now, and it seems to track well, and it's not too bad on pulling up grades and stuff. I don't know if it's any worse than any of the other sliding type cars I have as far as the loss of traction of the locomotives. But anyway, let me get back in the train room. Okay, all in all, I am pretty happy with the car. I can't get over this rocking and rolling thing here, though. It's kind of driving me crazy. It doesn't do that when it's in the train being pulled, and I think that's because of the body-mounted couplers. But if you look at the car, it seems to lean to one side, and I don't know, it just seems like there's an over amount of pressure on those springs underneath. Maybe a better choice would be to put a piece of thin lead or sorry. You can see how there's space. Here, let me get this. Let me take the body off of this and we'll explain this. Okay, you guys can see that I have taken my weight out of there. And you can see that the car, to me, it just seems to rock on the springs underneath. I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. Maybe it's just the bolsters that need to be filed a little bit flatter or something of that nature, but it appears to me like it does need a little more weight. But anyway, what I was going to say earlier is, you can see here how much space there is between the bottom of the car and the top of that holding device. If you were to cut out that underframe part there that's sticking down, and why that's sticking down I don't know, but if you were to cut that out, you could certainly put a washer or lead, or probably just a washer. You could probably take the springs out of there and put a washer or some type of weight, glue it directly to the top of that and not interfere with the bottom of the car or the operation of it, and that weight would actually be literally pushing down on the scrubber rather than weight on the car to compress the springs. And I think that would help it a lot. I'm going to mess with this. Oh, pardon me. I'm going to mess with this car in the future, and I will try and get back to you guys. But I don't have the time to do it right now, but we'll see. Maybe I will. We'll see how this goes. Okay, guys, just an update. I have not run the car yet, but I took the two springs that you can see right there out of the plate on the bottom, and you can see that it has the plate itself is metal, so it seems like it has enough weight to pull itself down onto the track, as you can see here. And when I put this on the track, hang on a minute, I got you out of the camera. I'm not very good at camera operation and doing stuff. My brain only works one way, you guys know that. Anyway, here it is without the springs in it, and you can see that the car is pretty darn stable without those dumb springs pushing up on and taking weight off the car. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the body shell back in on, and without the extra weight and without the springs, and we're going to cruise it around and see how it does. Okay, here we are on speed step 20 with the springs out, and you can see that the car is extremely stable with those springs out, and the train has no problem dragging it up the hill. Absolutely no problem. Plenty of weight in the car. The pad is definitely on the track and doing its job. I think the problem here, in my opinion, this is just my review, in my opinion, is that they just went a little too heavy on their spring pressure on the bottom of that thing. I think I'd leave, in my opinion, I would take the springs out and just leave it function just like that, and I think it would be perfect without adding any weight or doing anything else. I'm leaving the springs out of mine. We're going to go to the trestle. Okay, she's coming around. Speed set 20. No slippage, no anything. And I believe you can see that it's dragging the track there. So, I think it's doing its job. It doesn't have to be a lot of pressure on it. All it has to do is be consistent. And once you put it in a train without the springs in it, that pad's going to be on the track, going around doing its little thing, and I think that that's going to work well. I'm going to run it in a train for a while and see how she works. But I'm convinced that the springs are the problem. Just my opinion. I don't want to freak everybody out, but just my opinion. And I can actually see it going over the bumps there, and I can see that the pad is resting on the track. Okay, that's my review of the new Bachmann track cleaning cars, and I was a little bit skeptical at the beginning, a little bit disappointed, but I've been running it around here for 3 or 4 laps or 5 laps, and I've looked at the pad. The pad is getting darker and darker, which means it's doing its job, and I'm totally happy with it. So that being said, that's my review of the new Bachmann track cleaning car, and thanks for watching.